There's never been more ways to connect, but somehow we are more deeply disconnected than ever before. You're surrounded by voices, updates, noise, but it's like the real part of you has nowhere to go. We live in a world obsessed with ease, where struggle is a glitch, not a constructive challenge, where we've replaced face-to-face connection with comment threads, eye contact with blue light. And yet, beneath the convenience, something hurts. This video is about that feeling, and about one man who understood it better than anyone. Fyodor Dostoevsky, one of the most profound thinkers in modern history, and not through philosophy textbooks, but through stories such as his classics, Crime and Punishment and The Brothers Karamazov. Throughout, he doesn't lecture you. He makes you live it. He doesn't present abstract ideas. He gives you people, raw, fragile, broken, who act like we do, think like we do, suffer like we do. And through their descent, he shows us the parts of ourselves we've forgotten or tried to bury. That's Dostoevsky's brilliance. In the last episode, we talked about suffering, why the pursuit of constant happiness is a modern myth. Watch that video first to get a true taste of Fyodor's need for suffering. But here, we'll go further. Today's world is centered around comfort, consumption, and contentment. But what happens when suffering is erased completely? When AI can write your emails, draw your art, listen when you're lonely? When struggle is no longer a part of growth, but a thing to be deleted? What happens when we build a life with no friction and wonder why it slips through our hands? Dostoevsky didn't need to predict technology to understand us. He saw what we would become when we chose ease over meaning, pleasure over connection, comfort over truth. This isn't just a look back. It's a confrontation with the kind of future we're already living. Let's begin. The epidemic of disconnection. Loneliness today doesn't always look like solitude. It often hides behind group chats, playlists, dating apps, or even a busy schedule. You can be surrounded by people, messages, updates, and still feel completely disconnected. This kind of loneliness doesn't announce itself. It lingers quietly in the background, subtle but exhausting. Over time, it wears you down. It's not the loneliness of being alone. It's the loneliness of never being fully known. We live in a culture where disconnection is built into the way we function. We minimize friction. We avoid emotional risk. We value speed over depth. Many people now expect relationships to be temporary, optional, and low maintenance. We treat hard conversations as burdens. We treat people as replaceable. But this avoidance has consequences. The more we protect ourselves from discomfort, the harder it becomes to experience something real. This is where Dostoevsky's insights cut through. In Notes from Underground, he presents a narrator who has completely withdrawn from others. Not because he's shy, not because he's weak, but because the world has stopped making space for sincerity. The underground man has become hyper-aware of himself, to the point that every attempt at connection feels artificial, insincere, impossible. Dostoevsky writes, "To be overly conscious is a sickness, a real, thorough sickness." The sickness he's talking about is spiritual exhaustion, the kind that builds when you can't trust the world around you to hold your vulnerability. So you retreat, you watch, you judge, you speak only in irony or not at all. This is the kind of isolation we now see everywhere. People shielding themselves with sarcasm, scrolling endlessly to avoid silence, checking notifications instead of asking for help. We often assume loneliness means having no one around. But Dostoevsky shows us something deeper. Loneliness is being alive in a world where meaningful connection has become nearly impossible. Not because we don't want it, but because we've trained ourselves to fear what it demands. Time, honesty, awkwardness, and responsibility. The underground man becomes a mirror for the modern self. Introspective, alienated, hesitant to reach out, and convinced that no one else could really understand him anyway. And this isn't just personal, it's structural. When a culture prizes control, speed, and convenience, empathy becomes optional, intimacy becomes inefficient, and loneliness becomes normal. This isn't just something that happens to a few people. It's something we've designed ourselves into. Think about it. We're sold this push towards a more comfortable, convenient life. But let's explore a paradox here. Does this strive for a perfect world actually cause more suffering? Not suffering as you would normally perceive it, but a broader suffering of mankind as a whole. The promise of a perfect world. Modern life is increasingly designed to be effortless. You can order food, find a date, get a dopamine hit, and automate your work all without getting out of bed. Every inconvenience is treated as a flaw to be solved, or a new business idea. Every struggle is something to be optimized away. But what happens when life becomes too easy? When discomfort is engineered out of our daily experience? When friction is seen not as part of growth, but as something broken that needs fixing? This is where Dostoevsky's idea of the Crystal Palace becomes so relevant. In Notes from Underground, he introduces it as a symbol of a rationalist utopia, a society where everything functions perfectly, all needs are met, and human behavior is completely predictable. A world where people no longer speak from the gut, but speak like machines, repeating whatever sounds correct, expected, or safe. In a society designed for optimization, humans begin to act like LLMs, large language models. We say what we think we're meant to say. We mimic sincerity. We mirror each other. But nothing comes from the soul. The result is a culture of surface-level performance, where unpredictability is punished and authenticity feels dangerous. The Crystal Palace was Dostoevsky's response to 19th century thinkers who believed that with enough logic and planning, all suffering could be eliminated and human life made orderly, harmonious, and clean. The Crystal Palace was their dream. But for Dostoevsky, it was a nightmare. He describes it as a building made entirely of glass, beautiful, flawless, and terrifying. He writes, "I'm afraid of this building precisely because it is made of crystal and can never be broken." What frightened him was not the building's failure, but its success, its perfection, a system so polished, so rational, so efficient that it left no room for rebellion, contradiction, or soul. He understood something crucial, that to be human is to be chaotic, emotional, irrational, and free. A perfect world might look appealing from a distance, but up close, it suffocates. And if we look around today, we see the outlines of our own Crystal Palace taking shape. Our digital lives are curated and calculated. Algorithms anticipate what we want before we know it. AI tools remove the need for struggle. Our interactions are filtered, predictable, optimized for engagement. But in the process, something essential is lost. The awkwardness of real conversation, the meaning that comes from effort, the beauty of uncertainty. When you automate everything uncomfortable, you also flatten everything alive. You don't just eliminate pain, you eliminate depth. And that's the cost of the Crystal Palace. It offers comfort at the expense of authenticity. It removes suffering, but also mystery. It smooths over friction, but also spontaneity. And it's not just about technology, it's about mindset. We are building systems, social, digital, emotional, that are increasingly intolerant of anything unpredictable. But human beings are unpredictable. We change our minds, we contradict ourselves, we grieve, fall apart, recover, and contradict ourselves again. In a perfect system, there's no space for that, and so we adapt, We hide our complexity, we become performative, we disconnect. Just like the underground man, we may start to withdraw, not because we hate people, but because the world around us no longer has space for what's real. Dostoevsky wasn't warning us against failure. He was warning us against success, against the kind of success that sterilizes human life in the name of order and ease. Because a life without friction leaves nothing to push against, nothing to break through, nothing to make us feel truly alive. And when we build a world with no cracks, we forget that light doesn't enter through perfection. It enters through the breaks. The real result of a useless utopia. More and more people today say the same thing. They don't feel much at all, not sadness, not joy, just a kind of dullness, a quiet sense that they're going through the motions of a life they didn't quite choose. This isn't always caused by trauma or crisis. It often comes from something far more ordinary. A life that's been stripped of difficulty, of emotional risk, of real consequence. A life where every experience is streamlined, every response preformed, every feeling filtered before it's felt. When you live like this long enough, the result isn't happiness, it's numbness. When nothing challenges you, nothing shapes you. When there's no real friction, there's nothing to push against, and nothing solid forms inside. The self, once tested through struggle, begins to dissolve into performance. Dostoevsky understood this long before modern psychology gave it names. In Demons, he gives us a character named Stavrogin, a man who has everything society admires: charm, intellect, self-control, and yet inside, he is completely hollow. He drifts from act to act with no conviction. He seduces out of boredom. He agrees to revolutions he doesn't believe in. He watches others destroy themselves under his influence and feels almost nothing. Stavrogin is terrifying, not because he's evil, but because he's empty. He represents what happens when a person is disconnected from any sense of truth, when life becomes a series of roles, performances, and shallow experiments. He is what emerges when belief is replaced with apathy and feeling is replaced with performance. When we suppress suffering and eliminate discomfort, we also remove the internal structures that hold us together. We see echoes of this now. People unsure if their preferences are real or just trends. Emotions that feel rehearsed. Social interactions that feel like lines from a script. People say what sounds right, what's safe, what's expected. And little by little, they forget how to speak from anywhere deeper. In a world where everything is managed, optimized, and reduced to surface, authenticity becomes harder to access. The result isn't freedom, it's detachment. If nothing is earned, nothing feels real. If everything is predicted, nothing feels alive. Find your rebellion. Dostoevsky didn't write with our world in mind, but he understood it better than most of today's Tom, Dick, and Harry. He saw what happens when people are disconnected from truth, stripped of real connection, trapped in lives that are polished on the outside but hollow within. His books weren't just stories, they were warnings. And reading him today feels less like entering the past and more like waking up to the present. Because everything he feared, spiritual paralysis, emotional emptiness, performative identity, the crystal palace and the worship of ease, we're living it. But the point of recognizing this isn't to despair, it's to respond. You don't need to escape modern life or abandon technology to break the trance. You just need to start acting in a way that brings you back into direct contact with the world, with others, and with yourself. For example, create something from start to finish. Don't outsource it. If it's clumsy, messy, imperfect, even better, just make it yours. Feel the tension it takes to see something through. Focus your full attention on it. Let yourself be proud of the effort, not just the result. Relearn what it feels like to be deeply present. Speak to strangers. Rediscover the beauty of spontaneous interactions. Not to network, just to connect. Say something real, even if it's awkward. Speak without a script. Share what you actually think, not what sounds right or safe or clever. Do things that are inconvenient. Let boredom show you what's left of your inner life when the scrolling stops. Stop curating your identity and start living inside it. Dostoevsky believed that salvation, if it exists, isn't found in comfort. It's found in confrontation with yourself, with the world, with the parts of life we've been taught to avoid. And maybe the most radical thing you can do in a world designed to numb you is to feel again. So speak honestly, struggle well, and remember, you're still in there. All it takes is a quiet rebellion. Thanks for staying until the end. Drop your favorite quote from Fyodor's work in the comments. We'd love to read what stuck with you. Then let me know what topics you want to see next, which philosophers you want more content on, and which ideas need the Cogito Rebellion deep dive. There's more coming on other great minds we haven't yet touched. More on existentialism and how to turn all this heavy, difficult truth into something real you can live with, as well as continuing to explore what ancient philosophers might have said about the artificial intelligence revolution we're already living through. Until then, subscribe and stay human.